According to a top official, Sri Lankan police have been ordered to shoot on sight to prevent further unrest.
Frustration in Sri Lanka has erupted into violence between backers and opponents of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, injuring over 200. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am CJ Hirro.
And I am Nina Ricci, Alagao, Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
United States, China, and other world leaders congratulate Bongbong Marcos Jr. on Philippine election victory. Triumphant Marcos Jr. expected to deliver for the Philippines poor. Presumptive Vice President Sara Duterte accepts offer to lead DepEd. Malacanang creates presidential transition team. And get to know the latest partial unofficial votes for President, Vice President, and senatorial candidates as we continue Net 25's Mata ng Halalan 2022 election coverage.
U.S. President Joe Biden called presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. to congratulate him on his landslide victory in the recent elections, although there's no official proclamation from Philippine election authorities just yet. Aside from Biden, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also sent a congratulatory message to Marcos Jr. He said he looks forward to strengthening the alliance between the U.S. and the Philippines. Here's Vin Pascua for the story.
It is no less than U.S. President Joe Biden congratulated Philippines' presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on his recent election win, saying he was looking forward to working with the president-elect to continue strengthening the U.S.-Philippine alliance. The White House released this statement on President Biden's call to Marcos Jr., the son of the late President Ferdinand Marcos, who had ruled the country for more than 20 years. Biden said he wanted to expand the bilateral cooperation between the U.S. and the Philippines on a variety of issues, including the climate crisis, the COVID-19, and the human rights issue. The White House statement said President Biden underscored that he looks forward to working with the president-elect to continue strengthening the U.S.-Philippine alliance while expanding bilateral cooperation on a wide range of issues, including the fight against COVID-19, addressing the climate crisis, promoting broad-based economic growth, and respect for human rights. As of the latest unofficial count, Marcos Jr. already got 31.1 million votes, with his rival, Vice President Leni Robredo, a very distant second place with just 14.8 million votes. His lead thus widened to more than 16 million votes over Robredo, the chair of the Liberal Party, who ran as an independent candidate. Before that, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also sent a congratulatory message earlier in the day to Marcos Jr. The U.S. official said, "We look forward to working with President-elect Marcos to strengthen the enduring alliance between the United States and the Philippines." Blinken added that as friends, partners, and allies, we will continue to collaborate closely with the Philippines to promote respect for human rights and to advance a free and open, connected, prosperous, secure, and resilient Indo-Pacific region. Vin Pascua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Aside from the United States, China has also congratulated the BBM-Sara tandem for their landslide victory in the presidential and vice presidential elections. Chinese President Xi Jinping reportedly said he hopes to develop comprehensive strategic relations between China and the Philippines. Here's Moira Encina for the details.
China's ambassador to the Philippines sent a congratulatory message to presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. and his running mate presumptive Vice President Sara Duterte Carpio. In a statement, Ambassador Wang Xilian said he's confident that the relations between China and the Philippines will only become stronger under the Marcos administration. The Chinese diplomat also has no doubt that the Chinese and Filipino people will become closer and their cooperation deeper and wider. He's positive that with the Marcos and Duterte's wisdom and vision for the country, the Philippines will be able to rise above all the challenges in unprecedented unity. Meanwhile, Ambassador Wang confirmed that he already conveyed the respective messages of Chinese President Xi Jinping and Vice President Wang Jishan to Marcos and Duterte. This is Moira Encina for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Not just the United States and China, but also representatives from other countries have extended their congratulations to presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. In a message on his Twitter account, Japanese ambassador to Manila, Koshikawa Kazuhiko, congratulated the Philippines for its conduct of the May 9, 2022 elections. He said he is honored to have witnessed firsthand such an incredible exercise of democracy. Ambassador Koshikawa said he hopes to bring the relationship between Japan and the Philippines to greater heights. For his part, Ambassador Stephen Robinson of Australia also congratulated the country on the conduct of its elections. He said Australia is also looking forward to working with the BBM-Sara tandem, as well as all officials democratically elected by the people. Meanwhile, the European Union posted on its official FB page its observation of the recent elections. The foreign observers EU sent described the polls as a generally peaceful, fair, and free democratic process. The EU also said it looks forward to working with the incoming administration.
The Duterte administration created a transition committee that will ensure a smooth transfer of power by June 30. During the talk to the people aired this morning, Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea said President Rodrigo Duterte issued Administrative Order number 47 for the creation of the Presidential Transition Committee, or PTC. Medialdea, who serves as chairperson of the committee, added the PTC will oversee the implementation of the transition activities of the entire government and see to it that delivery of services to the public remains unhampered. Administrative Order number 47 also directed all departments, agencies, bureaus, offices, and instrumentalities of the government to constitute their own internal transition committees, according to Medialdea. The Transition Committee members include Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr., Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III, Budget Undersecretary Tina Rose Marie Kanda, and Socio-Economic Planning Secretary and National Economic and Development Authority Chief Carl Kendrick Chua. Medialdea vowed that PTC will work closely with the representatives of the incoming administration to ensure a peaceful and orderly transfer of power. Uniteam's presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. and his running mate Sara Duterte both lead the Monday's polls based on the unofficial or partial unofficial count of the 98% election returns sent to the COMELEC.
The poor communities of the Philippines have high expectations of the incoming administration of presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. For residents of this impoverished neighborhood in Manila, Marcos Jr. means hope. They do not see him as how other media entities demonize his name. Locals who also voted for Marcos told AFP they were hopeful he could bring the change that he promised.
Sa tingin ko naman, siguro kaya niya yun kasi ano naman ang mga sinasabi niya, wala siyang sinasabi na paninira o anuman, pero ang gusto niya, pagkakaisa. Yun ang palagi niyang inaano, pagkakaroon ng pagkakaisa para umangat ang ating bansa. Ganun. Na, mga naano ko sa ano niya, sa forma niya, yun nga, yung pagkakaroon ng trabaho. Kasi karamihan talaga, walang trabaho. Yun, tapos yung sa pag-aaral ng mga bata, yan. Yan ang mga naano kong ano niya. Siguro kung sakali man walang mangyari, siyempre, parang ano ka, siyempre malulungkot ka rin dahil siyempre naasahan namin ng mga Pilipino, inaasahan, tapos gano'n, siguro malulungkot.
Kaya ko siya binoto kasi yung tatay niya, dati pinagawa ng tatay niya. Number one tayo sa isa sa may mga ano, kilala tayo sa pang ano tawag dyan. Mga ano ba tawag dyan? Oo.
Vice Presidential frontrunner Sara Duterte Carpio accepted the offer by presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. to be the head of the Department of Education, or DepEd. In a statement, Duterte, who's also the incumbent mayor of Davao City, said she would work on producing skilled learners with a mindset of realizing their full potential. Prior to Monday's elections, the duo talked about Duterte heading the Department of National Defense. But she recognized that there are people who want to break the unit team and see the new administration fail by initiating intrigues regarding the DND post and her loyalty. Duterte expressed gratitude for Marcos's confidence in her to lead the Education Department. She likewise thanked incumbent Education Secretary Leonor Briones for her readiness to work on the agency's transition of leadership. Duterte added that she recognizes the sincerity, hard work, and dedication of Briones, whom she fondly called Sec Liling, especially in implementing education reforms under the Duterte administration. In choosing Duterte as the next DepEd chief, Marcos said Mayor Sara's best qualification is her being a mother who wants her children to be well-trained and well-educated.
Presidential aspirant and former presidential spokesman Ernesto Abella conceded and congratulated presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Abella accepted his defeat 3 days after the national and local elections. In a statement, Abella said he respects and accepts the results of the presidential election and he recognizes Marcos Jr. as the 17th president of the Philippines. Abella also said he hopes for the success of the new administration, its people, and the country as a whole.
The Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, junked another motion to declare presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. a nuisance candidate. Madeline Villar Moratillo files this report.
The COMELEC and Bank unanimously upheld the Second Division's earlier decision to dismiss the case filed by Danilo Lihay against Marcos Jr., which urges the poll body to dismiss his certificate of candidacy. In junking the motion, the ANBank noted that the motion was rehashed and no new arguments were presented. Lihay also filed his certificate of candidacy for the president but was disqualified and declared a nuisance. Commissioner George Garcia inhibited himself in the deliberation of the case as he served as an election lawyer to Marcos in the previous elections. Under Section 69 of the Omnibus Election Code, the poll body can cancel a certificate of candidacy if the candidate who filed it intends to mock the election process and has no bona fide intention to run. The ANBank said Marcos' political background is enough proof that he is serious in his intention to run as president. He also ran under the Partido Federal ng Pilipinas, which is a registered political party recognized by the poll body. Pending before the COMELEC ANBank and awaiting resolution is a lone motion for reconsideration questioning the candidacy of Mr. Marcos. This is Madeline Villar Moratillo reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, President Duterte urges next administration to initiate Cha-Cha and recommends abolition of party list system. Philippine National Police to exercise maximum tolerance in dealing with rallies. And check out the latest partial unofficial tally of votes for presidential and vice presidential race. Only here on Mata ng Agila International. You are still watching Mata ng Agila International, and now here's the latest tally from the partial unofficial canvassing on the presidential and vice presidential races based on election results transmitted to the COMELEC's transparency server. The number represents 98.35% of the votes counted as of 9:02 p.m. Still leading in the race is Bongbong Marcos Jr. with 31,104,084 votes. Second is Leni Robredo with 14,822,041 votes. Pacquiao with 3,629,805 votes. Following is Isko Moreno Domagoso with 1,899,859 votes. And finally, Panfilo Lacson with 882,236 votes. For our vice presidentiables, still leading is Duterte with 31,561,775 votes. Kiko Pangilinan coming in the second spot with 9,232,873 votes. Soto, 8,183,179 votes. Dr. Willie Ong with 1,851,382 votes. And Lito Atienza with 267,528 votes.
And a quick update from Russia. The vote counting at the Philippine Embassy in Moscow is now over. Here's our correspondent, Emi Coloma, to give us the details.
The manual counting of overseas absentee votes ended smoothly and peacefully at the Philippine Embassy in Moscow. The embassy received a total of 1,450 valid ballots, 1,377 of which came from Filipinos in Russia, while 73 were from those in Kazakhstan and Armenia. And similar to the sentiments of local voters in the Philippines, the majority chose presidential frontrunner Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. and his running mate Sara Duterte Carpio as their bets. In fact, out of the 1,450 valid ballots processed by the embassy, Marcos received 1,228 votes. VP Leni Robredo got only 102 votes, followed by Pacquiao who got 17. Meanwhile, Duterte Carpio received 1,233 votes compared to Senator Kiko Pangilinan's 66 votes. The validation of the ballots was led by Consul General Robert Ferrer, along with Finance Officer Attaché P. Machu and Ms. Joyce C. Shanko Gabino. There were 3 designated precincts for Pinoys in Russia and 1 precinct for those in Kazakhstan and Armenia. Emi Coloma for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
President Rodrigo Duterte is calling on the next administration to immediately start the process of amending the Constitution. He also recommended that the party list system be abolished. Duterte said in his talk to the people aired this morning that the next president should work on charter change or cha-cha early on so as not to give the public the impression that they are vying for another term.
Kung sino presidente na ngayon papasok, it would be as good as any other time to initiate whether to convert Congress into a constituent body or magtawag ng constitutional convention, but which is very expensive to do. Whether you want to convert it into a federal or ngayon na, umpisa na kaagad. Kasi pag ginawa mo yan, yung patapos ka na, sabihin nila, you want to change some provisions in the Constitution to allow you to run, gano'n. Parang ginawa sa akin na itong si Duterte kasi gustong another term. Sus Maria Josep. Inyo na lang yan. Pero dapat umpisahan na sa bagong administrasyon. Kailangan talaga.
Duterte wanted a shift to a federal form of government to address the economic and power imbalance in the country. Under the proposed change, the Philippines would be divided into states based on the existing regions. Duterte also suggested to the next administration to abolish the party list system.
Ako, I recommend the abolition of itong party list. Ginagamit eh. Although they are a very a few, but still they participate in the government that they wish to destroy. Iyan ang nakakatawa dyan. Pumapasok sila sa gobyerno, they participate in the governance process, and yet what they really want is to destroy that government at palitan nila ng kanila. That has always been the simple truth is, gusto nilang sirain ang gobyerno para sila ang pumalit. That was the mantra of the communists 53 years ago, and it's still the mantra of the communist rebels.
Presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. looks at the ill effects of isabong on families instead of the revenues it could give the government, according to his spokesperson. Attorney Vic Rodriguez added that Marcos, being an old school, is also mindful of balancing the social cost and the need for the government to generate revenue, especially now that the country is facing a 13 trillion peso debt. According to Rodriguez, Marcos, who values family, is disturbed by reports about children learning to place bets and gamble through isabong. He said that for Marcos, the government can let go of revenues from isabong if the family, which is the basic unit of our social institution, will suffer. Earlier, President Rodrigo Duterte heeded the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG's, recommendation to stop isabong, or online cockfighting. This came after the DILG surveyed cities and provinces regarding the social impact of the operations.
Department of Interior and Local Government, or DILG, Secretary Eduardo Año said there were 3,004 reported gun ban violations from January 9 to May 10 of this year, while 3,191 persons were arrested due to the said offenses. Año also reported to President Duterte that the May 2022 elections was generally peaceful and orderly compared to the 2010 and the 2016 elections. Compared to the two previous elections, there were only 16 election-related incidents this year, according to Secretary Año.
Philippine National Police, or PNP, spokesperson Police Colonel Jean Fajardo said they will manage with maximum tolerance the protesters who will stage a rally regarding the recently concluded 2022 elections. At the Laging Handa public briefing, Fajardo said the PNP officer in charge, Police Lieutenant General Vicente Dano Jr., gave the instruction to their personnel. Fajardo added the PNP will ensure the security of these activities and manage the traffic situation around the venue of the protest action. Last Tuesday, groups from the youth and labor sectors assailed the results of the elections and protested in front of the COMELEC main office in Intramuros, Manila. There were also reports coming from the opponents of former Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. that they will stage rallies in Manila and in Quezon City. However, the PNP and local government units were quick to prepare their teams to peacefully handle the situation.
Octa Research Fellow Guido David admitted that while their forecasts have been spot on based on surveyed respondents' preferred senatorial candidates, they did not see action star Robin Padilla dominating the poll. In a tweet, David showed Octa's April 22 to 25 Tugon ng Masa survey and compared it with the unofficial tally of the COMELEC, which comprised over 98% of election results. In the April survey, Padilla only ranked 4 to 8 with a 44% preference rating, succeeding Rafi Tulfo, who ranked first at 63% rating, Mark Villar, who ranked 2 to 3 with 55%, Loren Legarda at 2 to 5 with 51%, and Migs Zubiri at number 3 to 6 with 49%. However, as per the partial unofficial COMELEC tally, Padilla topped the list with 26.4 million votes as of this morning. David dubbed the surprise as the Robin Padilla phenomenon because the action star garnered huge numbers of over 3 million from Central Luzon, 2 million from Central Visayas, and over 1 million votes from Ilocos region, Eastern Visayas, Northern Mindanao, Davao region, Soxargen, and the Bangsamoro Autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao.
Philippine economic growth accelerated in the first 3 months of the year, according to the data released by the Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA. The gross domestic product, or GDP, grew by 8.3% in the first quarter of the year, compared with the 7.8% in the fourth quarter of 2021 and the 3.8% in the same quarter last year. The main contributors to the latest growth were manufacturing, wholesale and retail trade, and repair of motor vehicles and motorcycles, and transportation and storage. Household spending increased by 10.1%, while government spending increased by 3.6%. In terms of major economic sectors, the agriculture, forestry, and fishing expanded by 0.2%, industry by 10.4%, and services by 8.6%. Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua said the big driver of this growth is the full reopening of the economy. Chua pointed out that the latest Philippine economic growth is the fastest in East Asia and is now above pre-pandemic levels. Meanwhile, acting presidential spokesperson Martin Andanar credited the 8.3% GDP growth to the effective approach of the government in terms of handling the pandemic and joblessness. Andanar added the next administration would only have to continue the measures of the Duterte administration's finance or economic cluster team to sustain the improvement. He also cited the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, saying that the foreign direct investment net inflows also jumped by 46.3% this year. Next on Mata ng Agila International, Sri Lankan police ordered to fire live rounds on protesters. And Nicaraguan radio host seeking asylum in the U.S. drowns on Mexico-U.S. border. All these and more when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Russian President Vladimir Putin sent a congratulatory message to presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on the occasion of his victory in recent Philippine elections. President Putin said he hopes that Marcos's efforts as head of state will facilitate further development of the fruitful cooperation between Russia and the Philippines in various areas. Earlier, other world leaders also expressed their greetings to Marcos, who tops the presidential race by a landslide victory ahead of his rivals, including Vice President Leni Robredo.
COMELEC acting spokesperson Rex Laudianco ensured teachers who worked overtime during the recent national and local elections will be given additional honoraria. He also added that it will not be the first time that the teachers and electoral boards will be given additional honoraria, citing that it was also done in the previous 2019 elections. Laudianco said this will be given within 15 days from the day of the elections in accordance with the Electoral Service Reform Act. He guaranteed that the honoraria will be given within the time frame allowed by the law. Over 640,000 personnel of the Department of Education served as poll workers during the May 9 elections. Earlier, several teachers appealed to the poll body for the removal of a 20% tax from their election service honoraria. However, Poll Commissioner George Garcia said that though he supported the teachers, it would be up to the Congress and the Bureau of Internal Revenue to decide on this issue.
In other news, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby says a U.S. Navy cruiser that passed through the Taiwan Strait was another routine transit. The United States insists that nothing had changed in its stance toward Taiwan after Beijing was angered by its updated fact sheet that used less explicit language to reject the island's independence.
We've conducted Taiwan Strait transits before. It's not atypical for us. And you're right. This was another routine transit conducted today on the 10th through international waters in accordance with international law. The ship transited through a corridor in the strait that is beyond the territorial sea of any coastal state, which is the way we do this.
The State Department says the United States still recognizes only Beijing as China's government and was simply polishing off an online fact sheet that had not been altered in several years.
Bill Gates, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, announced that he has tested positive for COVID-19. Gates said that on Twitter that he's experiencing mild symptoms and he's following the experts' advice by isolating himself until he's healthy again. He added that he is fortunate to have been vaccinated and boosted with access to testing and great medical care. In recent months, Gates, a co-founder of Microsoft and one of the richest men in the world, focused his resources on the pandemic. He also published a book last week called How to Prevent the Next Pandemic, in which he explains how countries could pull off a coordinated effort to avert pandemics and eliminate all respiratory diseases. To date, Gates has donated an estimated $35.8 billion worth of Microsoft stock to the Gates Foundation.
Starting next week, air travelers in the European Union will no longer be required to wear masks at airports or when they are on the plane. However, the EU's Aviation Safety Agency says individual airlines could still demand that passengers use a face and nose covering. For flights to and from a destination that still requires masks, people will still be expected to use face coverings. It also says passengers with compromised health should wear a face mask. The agency is predicting air traffic should return to pre-pandemic levels by this summer.
Juan Orlando Hernandez, a former president of Honduras, pleaded not guilty to drugs and weapons charges in a court in New York. Hernandez was brought to the U.S. last month to answer charges that he facilitated the smuggling of some 500 tons of cocaine to the U.S. via Honduras in return for millions of dollars in bribes from drug traffickers. Hernandez faces 3 criminal charges: conspiracy to import a controlled substance into the U.S., using or carrying firearms including machine guns, and conspiracy to use or carry firearms. The ex-leader denied any wrongdoing and maintained he was innocent, arguing that he or disgruntled drug traffickers are just trying to frame him.
Es yo y estoy siendo sometido a un proceso de manera injusta.
However, U.S. prosecutors allege that Hernandez worked with some of the world's most prolific narcotics traffickers to build a corrupt and brutally violent empire. They also claim that he turned Honduras into a narco state by involving the military, police, and civilians in drug trafficking. Meanwhile, his lawyer, Raymond Colon, complained to the judge about the inhumane prison conditions faced by Hernandez, as if he is a prisoner of war. Colon went on to say that they were not asking for the former president to get special treatment, but the conditions his client was in were psychologically debilitating. Hernandez's case is expected to go on trial early next year, and if found guilty, he could face life in prison.
As the unrest continues in Sri Lanka, police have been ordered to shoot on sight to quell any disturbances. The order to fire live ammunition comes after another night of sporadic arson attacks. At least 8 people have died since Monday. Frustration over the country's economic crisis has erupted into violence between supporters and opponents of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The extra security measures are not stopping the trouble, which has spread across the country. Despite a curfew and the shoot-on-sight order, vandals have set on fire a luxury hotel that belongs to a relative of the president. Security officials say it's no longer spontaneous anger they are dealing with, but organized violence. Security has been beefed up for several government officials, including judges.
An update on the prison riot in Ecuador we reported to you about earlier this week. Most of the inmates who escaped in the melee have been recaptured. Police say about 20 convicts are still at large. Rewards of up to $3,000 have been offered to people who provide information leading to their capture. The riot left at least 44 inmates dead. The trouble started after 2 rival gangs in the prison clashed. This is the 5th such riot in just over a year, which saw 350 inmates dead. Prisons in Ecuador are overcrowded and short on guards. It's deemed that corruption allows prisoners to obtain all kinds of contraband, including firearms and explosives.
He was seeking a better life, a safer life. Nicaraguan radio host Calixto Rojas left his country to seek asylum in the United States after receiving death threats. Although he almost made it, death still claimed his life. A funeral has been held after Rojas drowned on the weekend. He was trying to cross the Rio Grande River from Mexico to the U.S. A television news crew captured his death on camera. According to Fox News, several people were looking on as he struggled in the water and went under for the last time. A friend of his who attended the funeral has this advice for other migrants from Central America. Do not leave your country. The United States doesn't have anything anymore.
A striking security camera video showed a man narrowly missing a lightning bolt just a few meters from his Florida home's yard. Denise Murphy said her husband, Rod, was outside turning off their sprinklers due to a forecasted rain when suddenly a lightning bolt struck mere yards away from him. Their Ring security camera captured the striking moment. In the video, the lightning bolt can be seen sending chunks of red-hot earth several feet into the air. Rod, while in shock, did not appear to be injured. Florida, which is known as the Sunshine State, is statistically notorious for its lightning strikes and thunderstorms. Next up, heat wave in Australia bleaches over 90% of Great Barrier Reef. Southeast Asian Games lights up Hanoi after COVID-19 delays. And German filmmaker produces documentary about public toilets. Learn more about these stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
In an effort to help address blood shortage, not only in their region, but also across the country, communities and organizations, including the Iglesia ni Cristo, have come together in Los Angeles, California. Alan Basalyahe reports.
Across the nation, blood supply lines are at dire levels. Working to help with this dilemma, the Iglesia ni Cristo Church of Christ has partnered with Livestream in hosting a blood donation drive.
During the pandemic, it was really hard to keep up with the blood supply shortage. We are still in a national blood supply shortage. We're still trying to catch up. I have seen an increase in donors being able to come out and donate, or where we are being able to stop in and donate. But during the pandemic, high schools were closed, which we count on our high schoolers also, because we actually hold drives at high schools as well. Churches were closed. We couldn't do that. We're still playing catch up.
We come to a lot of events like this just because right now we are very short on blood. It's very helpful. We help out our communities as well that are trying to get us more available drives out here. We are very short on blood right now. Very needed. As soon as we get it in, it goes out. So it's very important for people to donate.
They will screen us if we are qualified or not. And a little prick of needle. That's it. It's not really that bad. The process itself is like 10-15 minutes, so it's not that long. After that, a lot of professional healthcare workers here who help us recover.
Our doctrine is whenever our fellow man or our neighbor is in need, then we have to be ready to lend a hand, a helping hand. So that's what we're doing. We're opening our chapel so that we can conduct this blood drive and help or do something good for our fellow man. The teachings of God that we uphold in the church is also unity and love of brotherhood. So when there is a project, especially led by the church administration, you will always see members of the Church of Christ coming together, uniting, making sure that the project is a success.
The church is always ready to help out, especially the fellow men. So any activity like this, it's always good to help the people around the community especially.
Acknowledging the importance of the blood donation drive, city officials sent their representative to present certificates of recognition to the Iglesia ni Cristo and the Livestream.
It says, on behalf of the City of Los Angeles and the 6th Council District, I would like to thank you for your commitment and dedication to recruiting, educating, and inspiring blood drive donors and volunteers in an effort to ensure a safe and adequate blood supply for patients in need. You have provided a vital and significant contribution to your community. Thank you. On behalf of the Council President and the Assemblyman, I would like to thank you guys and Ricci on live stream Bloodstream for this event. Thank you.
Donors and donation organizers spoke about how giving blood helps the community and ultimately saves lives.
After donating blood, you're thinking to yourself, I got to help somebody in need who needs blood. So it's very nice.
I wanted to help, extend my help to other people in need, especially me. I work as a nurse, and sometimes I'm on oncology department, and a lot of people really needs blood and other blood products.
It's a life or death situation sometimes. Your pint of blood can literally save someone's life. Like, they need 1 pint of blood to live, and that could be you who donated.
Hesitation to donate can be understandable. After all, needles are sharp. But regardless, folks at this blood donation drive decided to give it a shot, knowing full well that every drop counts. Alan Basoyahe, Mata ng Agila International, Los Angeles, California. Trusted, connected, on point.
Australia's Great Barrier Reef is experiencing an unprecedented second straight year of mass coral bleaching, with scientists warning many species would struggle to fully recover. The 2,300-kilometer reef suffered its most severe bleaching on record last year due to warming sea temperatures during March and April. However, mass coral bleaching is once again occurring. This was what the government's Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority observed after an aerial survey of Australia's eastern coast. Authorities' Reef Recovery Director David Wachenfeld said in a Facebook video that this is the first time the Great Barrier Reef bleached 2 years in a row, adding that the authorities have seen the heat stress building since December of last year. Marine authorities said that the back-to-back occurrence of widespread bleaching also meant there was insufficient time for corals to fully recover. The barrier reef is already under pressure from farming runoff, development, and the crown of thorn starfish.
The NASA InSight lander detected the biggest quake on Mars, a Mars quake with a magnitude of 5 that took place on the red planet recently. The lander's seismometer, called the Seismic Experiment for Interior Structure, has the ability to detect Mars quakes from hundreds and thousands of miles away. Bruce Bannard, InSight's principal investigator at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, also confirmed that the Mars quake is sure to provide a view into the planet Mars like no other. Mars quakes are like the earthquakes we experience on Earth, just a little bit different when it comes to why they occur in each planet. He also said the InSight science team continues to analyze the quake to better understand its origin, source, and what it may reveal about the red planet.
Electric car maker Tesla is recalling 130,000 cars across its United States model lineup to fix touchscreen issues caused by an overheating central processing unit. The recalls cover certain Model S sedan and Model X SUVs from 2021 and 2022, as well as Model 3 cars and Model Y SUVs from 2022. Documents posted by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration say that during the fast charging process, the central processing computers may not cool sufficiently, causing the computer to lag or restart, making the center screen run slowly or appear blank. Without the center screen, the cars can lose rear-view camera displays, the settings that control windshield defrosters, and indicators that say whether the cars are in drive, neutral, or reverse, increasing the risk of a crash. Tesla is now fixing the problem with online software updates that will improve temperature management for the computer. In December last year, Tesla recalled nearly 500,000 Model 3 and Model S cars for a malfunctioning trunk latch system.
A former moderator working for Facebook owner Meta Platforms Incorporated filed a lawsuit alleging that poor working conditions for contracted content moderators violate the Kenyan Constitution. The petition also included Meta's local outsourcing company, Sama, and alleged that workers moderating Facebook posts in Kenya have been subjected to unreasonable working conditions, including irregular pay, inadequate mental health support, union busting, and violations of their privacy and dignity. The lawsuit, filed by one person on behalf of a group, seek financial compensation, that unionization rights be protected, an independent human rights audit of the office, an order that outsourced moderators have the same health care and pay scale as Meta employees. A Meta spokesperson told the press that they are taking responsibility to the people who review content for Meta seriously and require their partners to provide industry-leading pay, benefits, and support. The tech giant also encouraged content reviewers to raise issues when they become aware of them, and regularly conduct independent audits to ensure their partners are meeting the high standards Meta expects. Sama declined to comment before seeing the lawsuit, but has previously rejected claims that its employees were paid unfairly, that the recruitment process was opaque, or that its mental health benefits were inadequate.
The United Kingdom has introduced new facilities for renewable energy in order to face the sharp increase in energy prices and demand for oil throughout the city of Aberdeen, Scotland. From London, Ryan Florentino files this report.
The United Kingdom's oil and gas capital, the city of Aberdeen, on the west coast of Scotland, has been attempting to reposition itself as a renewable energy capital, but a sharp increase in energy prices and a surge in demand for oil and gas has raised questions about the city's goal of becoming a climate positive. Here is the Chief Executive Officer of Offshore Energies to tell us more. Let's listen in.
So as we look ahead, we do see reduction in oil and gas going forward in terms of the demand, and we see the increasing other energies coming forward, like offshore wind, like carbon capture and storage, and like hydrogen. And so for Aberdeen, it poses a real opportunity. You know, we've been the oil capital for the last 50 years. We think we can be the energy transition capital for the next 50 as we drive forward these new energies.
This is the largest UK marine infrastructure project in the United Kingdom. The new Aberdeen South Harbour is in addition to the incapacity of the Aberdeen North Harbour. It will ensure, as the world's ships get larger, they need better and bigger facilities. The Aberdeen South Harbour is here to provide that. What is important is its location. It is also within 100 nautical miles of 70% of the new offshore wind licensing sites that were announced through ScotWind, quoted the Chief Executive. From the United Kingdom, I am Ryan Florentino for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The SEA Games opened in the Vietnamese capital Hanoi after a 6-month COVID delay, with Southeast Asian pride at stake in everything from football to bodybuilding and esports. More than 5,000 athletes, including Olympic champions, were vying for over 500 gold medals in the event, which is staged every 2 years. The 11 nation games include traditional Olympic sports such as athletics, swimming, and boxing, but also regional ones like sepak takraw, an eye-catching volleyball-style game where teams kick a rattan ball. Thailand's Taekwondo world number 1, Panipak Wangpatanakit, and Philippine weightlifter Heidelin Diaz, who both won gold at last year's Tokyo Olympics, are among the top athletes on display. The 31st edition of SEA Games will be the first to feature xiangqi, also known as Chinese chess, which is wildly popular in the host country. These games will also see the return of Vietnamese martial art Vo Việt Nam, and will also feature a dance sport and the ancient Uzbek wrestling art of Kurash. Meanwhile, pencaksilat athlete Francine Padios delivered the Philippines' first gold medal. Padios, who was a runner-up in the 2019 SEA Games, exacted a revenge to dethrone Sari as the Filipinos scored 9.960, defeating the Indonesians 9.945. The Philippines also claimed 1 silver from Helen Aclopen in Courage Women's and 2 bronze medals from Courage national teams Charlie Calino and George Baclagan. The Philippine kickboxing team also assured at least 8 medals to boost the campaign for a successful overall title defense. German film director Wim Wenders has found a new inspiration for his latest project, public toilets. But not just any public restrooms will be featured in Wenders' cinematic work. He's going to Japan to capture the images of an urban renewal project in Tokyo. There, architects are transforming 17 dingy downtown toilets into works of art. They include 1 toilet with colorful see-through cubicles that turn opaque when the door is locked. Another has wooden panels by Olympic Stadium designer Kengo Kuma. Wenders says he was approached by organizers of the renovation project to make the film, and he hopes it will inspire other cities to do similar projects.
And for toilets to become places that are for free and that are clean and that are restful and where you have a feeling of security, it is really utopian, and it is something that I hope other cities will catch up on and try to imitate, because I think it would help the well-being and the peace people have in cities.
Here's what happened this day, May 12 in history. In 1777, the first ice cream advertisement in the country appeared in the New York Gazette. In the ad, confectioner Philip Lindsay announced that ice cream was available almost every day. In 1956, fictional TV character Homer Simpson was born in Springfield. He is the main protagonist of The Simpsons, the longest-running animated series in U.S. history. And in 1962, President Diosdado Macapagal moved the Philippine Independence Day celebration from July the 4th to June 12th. President Macapagal pointed out that July 4 was not the right day for Filipinos to celebrate their independence, since it somehow connoted subjection to and independence on the United States.
And before tonight's broadcast ends, let's get to know former President Manuel L. Quezon's wish for the Filipino people. I want our people to be like a mulave tree, strong and resilient, standing on the hillsides, unafraid of the rising tide, lightning, and the storm, confident of its strength. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates in our social media channels. I'm CJ Hirro.
And I am Nina Ricci, Alagao, Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.